Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's T3 Innovation Network meeting. This is the first part of a two-part annual meeting. The second part will be taking place at the end of next week. We'll talk more about that later in today's program, but we're excited to bring you this first installment where we are going to cover an impressive amount of material. I will challenge you to find another set of 2 hours that has fit in as much as we plan to fit in today. So know that this will be lightning fast. What we're going to do is do a series of showcases. We're going to start with providing an overview of the T3 network projects that have been taking place over these past 2 years as part of our second phase. You're going to get quick updates on each of those. And then we're going to do something a little bit different than we normally do. We're going to actually do demos for products that have come out of each of those project spaces. So you're going to hear about which demos are going to be available to you. And then we're going to divide up into 3 groups out of our plenary where we are going to be able to take part in the demo that we so choose. So you'll have an option to participate in one of the 3 demos, and we will give you the appropriate instructions on how to access the demo that you'd like to see first. But do not worry, all demos, including this presentation, will be available to you post-meeting, so you will be able to go and watch the other demos if they are of interest to you. But we're going to ask you to pick one while we are live. Then we're going to bring you back, and we are going to switch gears, and we are going to now want to hear from you. Again, something new. We want to give you an update on the projects. That's important, but we also want to understand that you are a part of this network and you all are engaged in very important work in this ecosystem. So we are going to be transported to, or we're going to have you access an interactive tool online, which is going to provide you all an opportunity to better describe to the network what you're working on and kind of which bucket or domain it sits in. So we'll give you instructions on how to do that, but be prepared. Once we're about midstream through the meeting, we're going to have you all start volunteering some information. So you've heard what we've been working on behalf of you as a network, but then we want to get more exposure to what you all are working on. And we want to make sure your peers know about it. So after we move through those 2 sessions, we are then going to transition to learning and employment records. And we are going to do a series, or you're going to see a series of rapid fire showcases from multiple LER pilots that are currently active and that want to share with you what they're doing. So you're going to get multiple presentations in rapid fashion to hear about some of the pilots that are reflected within our LER Resource Hub. And then to close, at the end, we are going to give you a little bit of sneak peek about the T3 Network of Networks, which is our phase 3 strategy. And we are going to give you a little bit of a preview about what to expect next week, because the second installment is going to be entirely focused on the T3 Network of Networks. So that's the lay of the land today. It is an ambitious agenda, but buckle up, sit tight, and stick with us. And if I can ask you to do one thing, if you haven't done it already, is please do introduce yourself in the chat box. Let us know who you are. And I implore you to be active. This is all about the network and us working together and communicating together and asking questions and learning from each other. So while we're going to shower you with content in a few minutes, we do want you as active as possible, connecting with your peers, connecting with our team and the consultants. And we just encourage you to be part of the conversation. That's why we're all here. So that's the lay of the land. Speak up and speak often in the chat box. We will have the opportunity to open up the mics once you are in the demo rooms, as well as when we are in the mural. I believe we might be able to open up. We'll let you know if we can open up the mics, but in the meantime, please do make the best use of that chat box. So that is the agenda for today. And with that, we're going to kick things off, and I will provide a brief overview of the T3 network to date. If you're keeping score, kind of where we started and where we're ending now. This was an effort that launched back in 2018. It was originally intended to be a paper on data interoperability and became instead an open innovation network. We eventually named it the T3 Innovation Network, and we got focused on building a roadmap that would support the digital transformation of the talent marketplace. And there were 3 big goals that eventually came out of that roadmap. The first was to build the data and technology infrastructure to make all learning count and to render that learning as data that is fully transactional across the talent marketplace. Number 2, to make competencies and skills the new currency of the marketplace, and like currency, to render them as data that is transactional and translatable. And three, to make sure we're taking this new infrastructure and empowering learners and workers with their data. Often individual learners and workers have the least amount of access or agency over their information, and we want to change that. We want to give them the most access and agency over it. So those were the three big goals, and what we had decided as a network back in 2018 is it takes a village to achieve this. No one product or platform will accomplish all of these things, but all of us working together, the end-use stakeholders of technology plus the technology community and vendor community, may be able to achieve this together. So that's why we created the T3 Innovation Network, and it has since grown from 2018 to now over 500 organizations. At our first meeting, we had about 60 representatives show up in San Francisco, and it has since grown quite a bit. It is currently made up of, like I said, those end-use stakeholders. So we have colleges, universities, businesses, community-based organizations, government agencies, but we also have the technology vendors and technology community, many nonprofits and others. So it is a very diverse, heterogeneous network, but we want to make sure it's the users of technology connecting with those who are building the technology itself and the data infrastructure, so we can actually achieve this grand vision for the digital transformation of the talent marketplace. I like to say that we always want to be grounded in use cases. So we are use case driven as a network. We are standards based, and by standards we mean data standards, because we believe through data standards we can truly unlock interoperability across this digital infrastructure. And we are vendor neutral. T3 is neutral ground. We want to make sure that to the extent we are putting time, energy, and resources into projects, they are solving problems on behalf of the community writ large. We want to make sure T3 is open and inclusive. Our membership is open and free. We want people to join these projects, help set priorities, and participate in delivering solutions. And we want to make sure that we're careful not to ever be in a position where we're providing someone with competitive advantage. So neutral ground, use case driven, and standards based. And we also, this is very important, want to make sure that we are promoting open, ethical, and equitable solutions. We want to cultivate a culture of and community of openness. We want to make sure that we are applying ethical considerations in the work we do, in the technology we build, and the data that we're trying to support. And we want to make sure that at the end of the day, this is an infrastructure that helps bring about a more equitable talent marketplace, not a less equitable one. So we always want to make sure we are gut checking ourselves to say, are we living up to these guiding principles? Are we achieving this as a community together? So that's who we are and what we've been all about in all this time. If we go to the next slide, just to give you a little walk through history, phase one began in March in 2018 and concluded in October in 2018. And this was largely driven by work groups that came together to build the roadmap, which was eventually unveiled in our phase one report in New York City. If we go to the next slides, we then implemented phase two, where we said we want to move beyond the roadmap and we want to now implement it. And we got our funders behind us. We reconstituted the network and we launched 8 specific projects, each with 2 project co-leads who helped move the work forward. But we always want to make sure in T3 these projects hung together because the sum of the parts or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And each of them was filling out a missing piece of the data infrastructure, but together they bring about the digital transformation that we need. So 8 projects, over 500 organizations. We conducted probably north of 40 webinars, issued 7 different reports. And with the launch of the LER Resource Hub, which we'll hear more about later today, we've now gathered over 24 LER pilots, the single largest repository and community group of LER pilots in the world. Next slide. We are coming to a close in phase 2, but we do want to recognize those funders that made both phases possible. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Walmart, Google.org, Lumina Foundation, who was the first investor in phase 1 and got it all started, Microsoft Philanthropies, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and ETS. This work would not be possible if not for their generous contributions and support that allowed us to not only produce the roadmap, but execute it. So we thank them, and I also want to give a special thank you to the team. We are joined by all of our project leads, as far as I know, and you're going to be hearing from most of them today. So thank you to the team, all of you who've made this work possible. I like to say the Chamber Foundation had the privilege of being able to help kind of coordinate these activities, but it is the folks who have led the projects and those who have participated in them that has really made this possible. So to that, we salute you. We appreciate you, we thank you, and we are excited to hear about the work that you've accomplished as we bring the second phase to a close. So with that, I am now going to pass the torch to Jeannie Kitchens, one of our project leads who's going to start the T3 project showcase. So Jeannie, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Jason, and hello, everyone. As Jason said, since initiating T3, much has been accomplished. And if we can go on to the next slide, you can see that there was a great deal of activity involving data standards. T3, of course, did not take on the role of developing standards, but we did facilitate work with data standards organizations, many interested T3 members, and convene numerous working sessions. Here are some examples of what was accomplished. Several data standards organizations collaborated and worked together across domains ranging from education to credentialing to employment to complete a mapping of data standards supporting several learning and employment record use cases. The LER use cases were also developed by a diverse group of T3 members. A work group led by ADP with HR Open Standards and our colleague Bob Sheets worked with a subject matter experts to identify use cases and develop a draft standard to improve individual employment and earnings record transaction data. And HR Open recently completed the draft standards and will issue a candidate release next week for review. So that's really exciting. Research on data standard organization practices was completed that can be used to expand open collaboration and include government and military. And if we go on to the next slide, the great thing is that all this work and all of those working sessions led to development of numerous resources. These resources are available to everyone on the LER Hub right now, and they include, in relation to the standards discussion, a paper on public-private standards development used by government, a paper on standards development implications for public-private partnership. The documented LER use cases are there available for any of the LER pilots that are looking toward fulfilling use cases. The semantic mapping of data standards, properties, and classes supporting learning and employment records is available, and that's the colorful picture you see on the right of the PowerPoint slide there. And due to the strong interest in standards that support LERs, it led to providing a directory of specifications that support the various aspects of LERs. That's available from the Hub. Now, as I said, the individual employment and earnings record standards are in draft review now. So they're not in the Hub yet. They will be, at some point, but right now, that information will be openly available through HR Open Standards website, and information will be forwarded to any T3 network members who are interested in the review process and a closing capstone meeting with that work on December 15th. And finally, if we go to one more slide that I'll cover, I mentioned the mapping, the process of the mapping schema terms across several data standards was tedious work. And that is not because of the members. It was an excellent exercise across many data standards organizations. It was because we used Google Sheets. But the process of mapping over the last couple of years and even prior to T3 has been very informative. And based on the learnings, requirements were developed for the Data Ecosystem Schema Mapper tool. And this tool is almost complete. It will be available to data standards organizations to maintain semantic schema mappings across domains. It is expected to further be enhanced in 2021 to output schema mappings as data that will support harmonization And it will be used with another tool for improving competency and skill data that our colleague Stuart Sutton will cover momentarily. This tool, the DESM, will be available for viewing the demo in one of the breakout rooms a little later in the webinar. And I will turn it over to Stuart.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon. I will be introducing the work of 3 projects focused on skills and competencies. The work of these projects was guided by a competency advisory group, or CAG, with more than 150 participants, and a smaller technical working group with about 15 participants. In all, the CAG and the TAG met approximately 30 times over the 2 years of the work. 2 of the projects, the Competency Framework Extraction Module, the CEFM, and the Open Competency Framework Collaborative, the OCF Collab, produced prototype open source applications that you'll have an opportunity to take a look at in the breakout sessions later in the program. The third project, Competency Translation and Analysis, produced a detailed document that includes an environmental scan of the current state and potential future state of skills and competency data. Next slide, please. All 3 of these projects represent key points in the skills and competencies life cycle. The extraction of competency frameworks from legacy document forms with the competency extraction tool in the lower right, through the publishing of those extracted frameworks and registries that have been networked together through the OCF Collab in the upper left, to subsequent application of AI algorithms on skills and competencies and associated resources to enhance meaning and to translate skills and competencies at the intersection of the supply and demand sides of the talent pipeline. Since I'll be giving a deeper overview of the 2 prototype tools in the next several slides, I'd like to take a little bit more time with the skill and competency analysis and translation work. The project's document deliverable explores the problem of the supply and demand side mismatch, current data, community, and algorithmic gaps that must be filled, improvement of skill and competency data modeling and expression, and what stakeholders can do to fill the identified gaps and to otherwise support the evolution of the skills and competency ecosystem. Now, in a couple of slides, I'll give a brief introduction to the 2 prototype applications you'll be seeing in the upcoming breakout sessions. Next slide, please. A robust competency ecosystem demands that the data be machine actionable and function as linked data on the open web in order to knit together a tighter weave between the demand side of work and the supply side of education and training. But in many cases, skills and competencies are held prisoners in legacy data formats, PDFs, Word.
Is that me or is it Stuart?
Stuart, we seem to have lost your audio. We have you back now.
Oh, yeah, someone had internet was unstable, sorry. So I'm not quite sure where I phased out. How long ago?
Just a few seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll back up just a little bit and make sure I covered. A robust skills and competency ecosystem demands that the data be machine actionable and function as linked data on the open web in order to knit together a tighter weave between the demand side of work and the supply side of education and training. But in many cases, skills and competencies are held prisoners in legal data formats, in legacy data formats rather, PDFs, Word documents, and text, plain text. To render that captive information as machine actionable data means we have to meaningfully extract it from those legacy formats. And that is exactly what the CFEM tool does. It ingests files in their legacy formats, and using AI algorithms, it extracts the skills and competencies. It supports human review and editing of the resulting data, and it assigns each skill or competency a URL so they can be used in linked data. And then it exports the resulting machine actionable data using an array of public formats for expressing competencies and skills for use by downstream applications and registries. Next slide, please. The next tool, the OCF. Now, having published the skills and frameworks in machine actionable form on the open web is of minimal use if the employer and the worker can't find them. So the first step of good discovery is for the skills and competencies to be registered with a public registry. It's a function of the OCF Colab network to knit together those registries so that the skills and competencies can be discovered through any registry in the OCF Colab network. Now, it's assumed that different registries on the network will rely on different underlying meta models. In other words, some registries will use IMS case, others will use CTDL-ASN, others will use ASN, and even others will use Medbiquitous. In other words, a registry that speaks case may request a framework from a remote registry that speaks CTDL-ASN. As a result, the network provides what we call a meta model interchanger to map from one meta model to another based on outputs from the data ecosystem schema mapper tool that Jeannie just described. This functionality makes each registry in the node of the network a polyglot, can speak many languages, understand many. So the OCF Colab is a data trust supporting the sharing of competency frameworks between member registries in a manner that respects the social and economic value of the data that traverses the network through enforcement of machine actionable rights agreements, network transaction logging and analysis, and high levels of attribution. So that concludes my comments on these three projects, and we look forward to seeing you in the breakout rooms. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Matt D. of Bright Hive. Matt.
Thanks, Stuart. Last but hopefully not least, back at the T3 kickoff meeting, Workday headquarters in March 2018, we talked about a student named Sue and how what it would take to connect her data across siloed systems, across her kind of lifelong journey, and empower her with her own data. And pilot projects 9 and 10 really came out of that discussion and are focused on two critical aspects of solving that challenge for Sue and ensuring equitable data access and privacy for all learners and workers through linked individual level data. First is a work group co-led by Stefan Verhulst at GovLab, myself, and Tom Plaguey, exploring use cases, challenges, and best practices for public-private data collaboratives comprised of organizations that steward over individual level data, this very sensitive data, that want to come together to securely and responsibly link that individual level data for some new public benefit purpose. This work group had 114 participants over its lifetime and had 10 meetings. And the second major pilot project is a work group led by Kim Hamilton Duffy, focused on exploring use cases, challenges, and best practices for management and use of individual level data as we democratize that data and accelerate the transition to more individual control over that data, but still make it trusted and verifiable. And so these work groups, that work group had 135 participants and had 15 meetings doing that work. If you can go to the next slide. Coming out of all of those work group meetings and those discussions, T3 and its consultants and all of the participants in those work groups have produced 3 open resources that really summarize what we've learned from all of that great work group discussion. So the first is a resource focused on applying self-sovereign identity principles to interoperable learner records. These are also known now as learning and employment records, or LERs. And that leads to the second deliverable, which is a public specification, almost a conceptual specification for learning employment record wrappers. So how you wrap around all the different data standards that Jeannie talked about, and wallets. And then the last resource is an online playbook for partnerships looking to build new data collaboratives, where individual level data is part of that data collaboration. And this playbook, this online playbook, includes specific plays and checklists that those partnerships can walk through to make sure that they're doing it in a way that aligns with best practices, is responsible, aligns with key privacy and compliance considerations, etc. So all three of these resources will continue to be available online and made available through things like the LER Resource Hub. And we'll share a bit more later about how these work groups and these open resources have been used by network members to make Sue's story of digital empowerment possible this year, which is so excited about the progress that's come out of this work. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it back to Josh.
I'm going to step in here and take this one, Matt. So if we go forward, perfect. So here's where it's going to get interesting. We appreciate you listening in on these T3 project updates. A tremendous amount of work has gone into them over these past 2 years, due in no small part to the contributions you have all made to those projects. But now we actually want to not just talk about the tools, but show you a few of them. So we are going to do a tool demo. And what that means is you have a choice of watching one of 3 demos. There will be one on the competency framework extraction module. There will be another one on the data ecosystem schema mapper. And there will be one on the open competency framework collaborative. Again, the CFEM competency framework extraction module is all about taking non-structured data and producing structured data. The OCF Collab is about linking registries of competency and skill frameworks so they can be connected as part of an interlibrary loan system, so to speak. And our data ecosystem schema mapper, which is the platform that will facilitate data standards mapping going forward. So 3 excellent tools. We're excited to show them to you today. And if you were to look in the webinar chat box, you will find a link for how to get to the data ecosystem schema mapper and a link to how to get to the competency framework extraction module rooms. So CFEM, there's a link there, the DESM, the DESM, there's another link. And if you're interested in the Open Competency Framework Collaborative, stay here. That's going to be in the main room. You don't have to go anywhere. Very important note as you're making a decision. Once you go to one of those rooms, we will be sending you another link in the chat box to come back after 10 minutes. So make sure you hit that link. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to rejoin us. We're not pulling you back in automatically. So you have to click that link to rejoin the meeting. Please don't miss it. So with that, we ask that you make your choice, and we're going to hand the reins over to our 3 demo facilitators. So again, make your choice, or if you don't make a choice, you're about to get a demo of the OCF Collab.
Okay, we'll wait just a moment or so for people that are wanting to exit the room to exit, and then we will start the video of the demo. So we'll do a demo for about 7 minutes, 6-7 minutes, and then we will do Q&A afterwards. I think we can go ahead and start the video.
Greetings, and welcome to this brief demo of the OCF Collab prototype. Before we jump into the demo, I want to go over some of the basics of the network architecture and functionality partially described on this slide. Our main focus in this demo is on the 3 entities circled in red at the center of the diagram and the data flows between them. The rose-colored entity at the top is what we call a registry's requester node agent, or RNA. This agent handles searching the collections of all of the registry nodes in the trust network. The search result is a listing of competency frameworks satisfying the search. Once a user selects a framework to retrieve from a remote registry, the RNA fetches the framework record and displays it for the user. If the provider registry permits, exporting this retrieved competency framework is enabled. The rose-colored entity at the bottom of the figure is the registry's provider node agent that fulfills requests for frameworks by sending them back to the requester node agent through the request broker. Every registry in the network has this pair of agents to handle authentication, requests, and fulfillment of requests. The primary function of the blue request broker entity is to mediate transactions between a requesting and a providing registry. It also logs all transactions and on occasion triggers a metamodel interchanger, here in green, to interchange the native metamodel. I'll say more about that later. So with that, let's look at the prototype OCF system. What you are seeing here is the interface of a request node agent, or RNA. It's ready to execute a search of the network, which includes just under 300 framework descriptions from 3 registries: Credential Engine, Desire to Learn, and IMS Global. I am going to type in a search here. I'm going to search for construction. And when I click search, the search of the network index of all things in the ranking will be triggered. So we'll search. And what you're seeing now is a sort of table of contents of all of the frameworks that were retrieved. And you'll notice over on the right that we've got frameworks from the three registries in the prototype, from D2L, IMS Global, and Credential Engine. Now, up to this point, the PNA, the provider node agent, has not been engaged. I'm going to do a query for construction in the D2L registry and request its return by a PNA for D2L. Now, what you're seeing here is a RNA, an instance of the RNA, and it's the instance for D2L, and this is a 2-panel display. On the left, you're seeing at the top a description of that framework that we retrieved, and underneath it, the set of competencies for that framework. On the right, we're seeing the detail data on the node or the entity on the left that we've selected. So here it's the framework. Here I switch to a competency, and we see the data for the competency on the left. So now if I go back to construction, to the competency framework, and I go to the bottom, you'll notice that there's an export button here. And the export button also has a selection menu. And what these are the meta models that this record can be exported in back to you. So natively, it would be ASN because D2L uses ASN, but you could also pick CTTL, ASN, or case, and it would make the meta model interchange for that. This is present only when the provider has made it possible through its licensing to download a framework. So that's the basic structure of the display and the return. Let's go back and quickly take a look at an IMS record, CTE, architecture and construction. And we again see the same basic architecture for the display. Here we see the description of the framework, and the export is case. And we've expanded this. We can also collapse. We've expanded it. If I pick a node, then I get all of the data for that particular node. Let's take a look briefly at credential engine. And this is the credential engine record returned from this directly from the server on request. And it follows the same pattern. We get the description, the detail of the first of the certified construction manager. And then if I go down and pick a framework, a competency, we'll get the details for the competency. So in essence, that's the way the network functions. So I think I'm going to stop now, and we can go back to for our Q&A.
Okay, you can use the chat panel to ask questions. I got one from Greg here. Stuart, how can we tell whether this data is being pulled live from its source versus loaded or cached? And I said, I just responded in the chat that you'd have to take my word for it at this point. But it is. That was a live request from to all three of the servers for those three registries. Other questions?
Also, given that we still have about 3 minutes of time for Q&A, if you'd like to raise your hand, I'd be happy to unmute those that are on the line to ask verbally if you'd like.
Well, while we're waiting to see if there are other questions, I could talk a little bit more about the architecture while we're waiting.
There actually seems to be a few more questions in the chat. People like to.
Oh! I have to scroll down, don't I? Sorry.
One question's from Rick at IBM, and he said, "Are the frameworks free to use?"
It depends on what you mean by use. For example, there may be prohibitions as one of them, and the only one that would be enforced by the network is that is whether the provider will allow them to download the framework itself. That's the only one that is here. But one of the key things to remember is that all of these frameworks already have a licensing regime. Credential Engine, IMS Global Case, and D2L all have a regimen for controlling what an end user can do. They're the ones that say whether an end user can make copies of this and distribute it further, or they can make a duplicate or a derivative work from it. That's all controlled right now by the original licensing of those registries. There's the second layer of permissions, though, that has to do with the behaviors between nodes in the registry. In other words, what will a registry let another node in the network do? Like, will it let that other node in the network save a copy of this in their repository? They may not allow it. And those will be controlled by machine actionable rights policy documents for each of the registries that are defined by the registry from a limited array of things that they will allow another node to do with that. So it's all controlled. So the network doesn't have anything to do in the end with the rights to end users. That's already defined by what the registries have established.
And Stuart, I see that Tom Green raised his hand from Acro. So Tom, I'm unmuting your line right now. If you'd like to ask the question verbally, and given the time for others, we are saving the chat, so we will document your questions and be able to respond back to you if we don't get to them. But go ahead, Tom.
Great, thank you. So as the work to create learning records in colleges and universities, the comprehensive learning records that were created has gone on, Many universities have what would be proprietary or one-off type of frameworks for learning, meaning that they've organized their learning into certain buckets or certain categories based upon an educational philosophy that they have. What's the process for them to be able to offer that as a learning framework along one of these nodes, such that when an employer, for example, bumps up against it, that it would return some kind of framework on the other end that could be ingested or understood with the data for the record?
Well, it sounds to me, well, first off, how have they, in your scenario, have they made that record public otherwise? I mean, the framework public otherwise?
Likely not.
Probably not. Well, first off, there's the decision is whether they want to expose it at all. Is it so proprietary that they don't want the world to know? But our goal and our hope is that more and more people will share them, because it will help us weave a better piece of fabric for this whole ecosystem. But if they choose to publish, there are really two routes. The first route is to publish in, if they don't want to publish it themselves and maintain all the traffic and everything, they can publish to one of the registries, an existing registry. Credential Engine registry has a well, the three registries that we just saw demonstrated, they have repositories where they can accept stuff based on whatever their rules of acceptance are. But the first thing would be the simplest thing is just to publish them in one of the public registries, like Credential Engine registry. But if they are a holder of many registries themselves, then they should think about possibly being a node in the network. Because remember, this links together the registries, and a person can reach any of the registries through one entry. They can enter one registry, search the whole thing. So if you've put your stuff in a registry, you only got one framework, you put it in a registry, it would be accessible. But if you're managing a lot of frameworks like ASN, D2L's ASN and IMS Global Case and others, and credential engines, then the probability is that you would want to be a node and become a trust member in the node, so that you can participate in that architecture.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah, I don't think it's any desire to keep their frameworks hidden. They just haven't thought about the interchange and the need to have their framework on an interchangeable standard or format such that others could ingest and read it. So, thank you.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And again, given the time, we actually have the other demos coming back to the room again, back into the main room here. So we'll put up the title slide for our next activity, getting more of the community involved in this work. And again, for those who did not get their questions answered, we are saving the chat and we'll respond. So feel free to keep adding in those questions, and we'll make sure we respond to those.
Excellent. Josh, do you want to give it another minute for folks to file back in, or you want me to dive in on this next part?
Feel free to dive in, Matt.
Okay, great. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the main room. So really, one of the most exciting things about the T3 network is not just seeing great tools like we just had presented and learned about, but seeing the initiatives, the partnerships, the networks and innovations that network members, all of y'all, are self-organizing to make happen and advancing our shared T3 goals. And unfortunately, if we highlighted all of them in a webinar format or in breakout formats like we just did, we'd be on this webinar until New Year's. But we wanted to give the network an opportunity to, for all of y'all to share your successes, your initiatives with each other and just increase visibility. So I'm going to grease the skids a little bit by highlighting a few of these emergent network activities. And then we're going to have what's called a mural board that allows folks to directly kind of name their activity and make it visible to everyone else. So if you can go to the next slide. So just highlighting a few examples. Stuart talked about that report on skills and competencies and how it highlights some of the market gaps and next steps. And one of the amazing things that we witnessed this year is that that T3 members stepped up and organized to meet each of those major challenges highlighted in that paper, and that it came out of the work groups. So three quick examples of that, right? To address one of the gaps in skills data availability and usability, T3 members led by WGU formed the Open Skills Network that's producing tools and best practices that lower the barriers to adoption of skills data and skills-based practices. To address one of the challenges that was surfaced of just algorithmic innovation for competency translation, Dextera and RID Labs have stood up a Kaggle competition for AI in education that's actually already broken participation records on Kaggle's platform. It's incredibly exciting. And lastly, we've seen great piloting with institutions around things like skill and competency translation through efforts like the Competency Catalyst project that a number of T3 members came together and got NSF funding to make happen. If you go to the next slide. And then very briefly, in the area of empowering the individual learner, in advancing those ILR and LER Wrapper and Waller concepts and really making them concrete and industry adoptable, we've seen amazing efforts like the IEEE ILR work group come together and ILR best practices, and also that wallet specification, the W3C verifiable credentials work group, and continue to refine the education payload specification. We've seen new funding opportunities that have galvanized collaboration around individual level data, like the ACE Blockchain and Education Challenge, or new RFPs emerge, like the Midwest Higher Education Compact, that have caused T3 members that have been thinking about working on this to come together with proposals. And we've seen pilots in the individual level data area, where we're going to talk a lot about them in the second half of this, around learning and employment record pilots, 25 and counting, I think, that we know of at least, and 12 data collaborative pilots across the network and counting. So all of those things are happening and more. And we want to give everyone an opportunity to share those things, share your initiatives out that are advancing those T3 goals. If you can go to the next slide, we're going to provide a link in the chat for everyone to click on. An important thing here, you can click on this link without exiting Zoom. So don't exit Zoom. Keep your Zoom thing open, but click on this link. And what our ask is if you have an initiative that is advancing one of these 4 goals, or is at the intersection of these 4 goals, you take one of those stickies on the far right, or you just double click anywhere on the board and start typing the name of your initiative. You can include maybe even the names of some of the partners that are involved. This will provide an opportunity for visibility across the network for your initiative that is advancing these goals. And with that, I'm going to ask Naomi if she'd be up for helping me highlight some of the initiatives that folks are sharing out as they're sharing them. Oh, this is good. We've got a lot of activity, folks dragging and dropping. This is looking good.
All right, and we're starting to see a few pop up in the empowering learners and workers area.
Oh,
we see HR.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say we see HR Open Standards, Verified Resume CV Data Standard, NSF, Competency Catalyst Skill Sync, educational resources to demonstrate the value proposition. I'd like to hear more about that one.
One thing that would be great is if you've got links to any of these, that if you want folks to find out more, go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can put them directly in that card. Drop in the link so people can find out more and get involved.
Definitely. And if you can clarify your organization and any additional information, it will give us opportunity to follow up with you.
That's a really big milestone. If we see in advancing competency and skills as a new currency, over 750 competency frameworks published to the credential registry and available in CTDL. That's a standard structured data format around skills, competencies, and credentials. That's amazing, amazing progress. It's really great to see things like Lego getting into the game with partnerships with folks like the Learning Economy Foundation, standing up something called the Super Skills Lab. Imagine kids building Lego sets, learning and building skills that have meaningful kind of education and market value. That's really fun.
I just wanted to add in, because I saw through some comments, a few people were attending by phone, others on their mobile device, making it a little bit hard to get to Mural. We will be keeping the Mural board open for the rest of the day. So as you would like to add more to it over time and you have the link, we'll make sure that we'll keep that open so you can add your information. And by the end of today, we will freeze the board so that we can start to analyze and share out some of this information.
Looks like there's a fascinating partnership between APHIS and Johns Hopkins U in making all learning count. That's fantastic.
And that's showing up in two areas, actually, empowering learners and workers and making all learning count. We see the Broward Equity Collab under making all learning count.
That's a fantastic and fascinating initiative, really being led by a school district. I think in some ways underrepresented in the T3 network, but K-12 institutions are a key player in making all learning count and advancing these T3 goals. It's great to see that happening by network members. And Joanna, if there's anyone here from Broward that can wants to connect, it looks like Joanna has posed a question in the chat, wanted to know who she can connect with.
We're going to give about a 1-minute warning. So if you haven't put anything on the board yet and want to, you have about a minute left.
And thanks, Rick, for putting that link to the YouTube explainer for IBM's Learner Credential Network. That's those kinds of links are great for helping other network members understand your initiative and figure out how to get involved. This is just so exciting to see. I know we're wrapping it up. Any takeaways for you, Naomi, as you're kind of looking across all of this activity in all these categories? You know, what are you feeling or thinking in seeing all of this? Oh, did we lose Naomi? I think we lost Naomi. Well, I am personally feeling inspired and energized by all this activity. I wish I had enough lifetimes to be involved and plugged into all of these efforts, but just knowing that they're happening, knowing that they're connecting, and knowing that they're advancing the shared goals of T3, I think will have to be enough for me at least. And excited that to just see all of this activity and hopefully the shared visibility will make it easier for all of you to connect with each other and advance each other's objectives. And with that, I think I'll hand it back to Jason.
Right. Thank you, Matt. And keep working on the mural if you like, but we are going to be plowing ahead in the Zoom room where we are moving into our next phase. We told you there's going to be a lot to share, and now you're really going to want to buckle up because we are jumping into learning and employment records, and I'm going to provide just a few preliminary comments, but then we're going to hand things over to our LER community manager, Phil Long, who's going to be our master of ceremonies as we begin to learn a lot more about the pilots that have been joining the community group in our LER Resource Hub. But before we get there, just want to do a little level setting. If we go to the next slide. When we were about midstream through our second phase, more and more energy was accumulating around the discussion of records. And we had heard in the one breakout session from Tom Green and Acro, and that network there has been just pioneering comprehensive learner records, CLRs, and at this time we started talking about interoperable learning records, birds of the same feather, but really just trying to talk about not only being able to document all learning, regardless of where that learning occurs, but to make sure it is machine actionable across our systems. So it's computable. It's data that can actually move not just as attachments, but can move as data from one system to another across domains. So education to employer, military to education, military to employer, but making sure this is data that can seamlessly move across our systems and is transactional across the various domains and end use stakeholders. Why did we get involved? If you were to look at all of the projects that you heard about earlier, these are all critical pieces of the data infrastructure needed to make LERs possible, learning and employment records. If you want to be able to produce LERs at scale and share them across domains, it takes a data infrastructure to accomplish that. So what we did when we were in Chicago is we called upon the network to start prioritizing LERs in all of our various T3 projects. And we have been working at it ever since. The goal was to get the data infrastructure in such a place where we can support an open innovation marketplace of diverse LERs addressing a wide variety of priority use cases. I forgot the exact number. I think it was over a dozen use cases were identified. We prioritized 5 for initial testing, but we were open and inclusive to address whatever use case an LER pilot wanted to address. And what we tried to do is say, let's meet the network where they're at. Let's work with those pilots that are already starting to gel, who've already been doing work around CLRs, whether the pilots or the data standards community. We wanted to work with emerging pilots and those that were being shepherded along as part of the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board, and said, let's build on what folks are already doing, meet them where they're at, and now start fine-tuning the data infrastructure resources we're building to be in service of them. And the goal, more LER pilots, more learning, more peer-to-peer interaction and engagement, so we can all learn together as we try to make this LER infrastructure not only possible, but truly global and interoperable. Go to the next slide. So we refocused the network to begin addressing use cases and issues related to LERs. And one of the things that came out of that meeting is folks said it would be useful to have something like a learning and employment record resource hub. Well, you asked for it, we built it. We launched it this year in the summer. We built it in partnership with the Learning Economy Foundation, and it's free. It's open to all stakeholders, whether you're in T3 or not. And what we tried to do is aggregate together a set of open data resources and tools, and to be connecting to partners who can help folks who are pursuing LER pilots to make them better, but also for new entrants to be able to begin gathering what they need to create an LER pilot. So it's a community site, it's open to all, it has tools, resources, it has best practices, and it's an iterative resource where we want to continue to produce new versions of the LER Resource Hub, always addressing the needs of the community. So we launched version 1 in a very basic way, but as we built that LER pilot community, which is now over 24, the largest repository of LER pilots in the world, we want to learn from them, make this their hub, and take our instructions from them. What else do you need to be successful? How can we onboard new partners in a more streamlined way? So the hub is there. We encourage you to visit it if you haven't already done so. If you're interested in pursuing a pilot, we encourage you to join that community group. You're under no obligation. It just means you're part of the team. And we want to learn from you, and hopefully you can learn from us. And we're excited to continue this work. So we know we're bringing phase two to a close, but we're excited to join the LER conversation to help advance the infrastructure to support it. We appointed Phil Long, our LER community manager, to work with those pilot sites and understand their needs and to communicate back to the various projects how they can be adapting in ways to serve the needs of that community. And this work will continue. As we move into the next phase, LERs will continue to be a central focus of T3. So with that, I'm going to hand the reins now over to Phil Long, our community manager, to make some remarks and to begin to introduce a rapid fire showcase of some of those pilots that are currently represented in that community group. So Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome everyone. The groupings we put together here are based really on an attempt to try to group some common things together, but recognizing we wanted to have sort of equal sets so that there's a pause between them so that you're not completely overwhelmed with the stream of 16 videos in sequence. There will be a person from each of the presentations in the chat while their particular video is running. And so please use that as an opportunity to ask quick questions there, or note the questions you want to ask and follow up with them later so that we make the connections that are important to this community. The first 5 of the 3-minute videos each are focused largely on K-12 students, with one adapting the wallet for a mental health application and a second looking at synthesizing the use of the credentials from K-12 to college education and into work settings. So with that brief introduction, I've always wanted to say this, roll the videos, please.
My name is Greg Nadeau. I'm a manager at Public Consulting Group, a management consulting firm with a mission to provide solutions that matter for public sector clients. My team at PCG leads several of the relevant technical standards, including IMS CASE and CLR and IEEE ILR, and key projects associated with learner and employment records. One of our most important projects is the Broward Equity Collab. The Broward Equity Collab is a research and development collaborative laboratory dedicated to instrumenting multiple diverse sources of information regarding grades, assessments, and less formal accomplishments to generate trusted, verifiable achievement assertion credentials for diagnostic personalization, precision aggregate analytics, and to publish to digital wallet apps for learners and their adult guardians to curate and control access to their personal data. With over 280,000 students, Broward is the 6th largest school district in the US. The initial focus of the Equity Collab is to directly ameliorate the acute and fundamental equity gap associated with mastery of algebra by too many young learners of color. In this graph, the red and ovals highlight the percent of learners in each grade in a typical year that do not yet demonstrate proficiency in algebra. With earlier identification and targeted intervention, we can dramatically close that gap. Algebra, like literacy, is a civil right. Without it, learners are often blocked from subsequent opportunities. The work we are doing in Broward and the work others here are sharing in their LER pilots hold the potential to transform our education system from one that too often is used to sort haves from have-nots and perpetuates the nation's growing inequalities into a new, more dynamic system that values learning anytime, any place, any pace. Together, we call this system the Internet of Education. The Internet of Education connects all types of learning into a global talent pipeline. This democratization of talent will unlock what Raj Chetty calls a million lost Einsteins. His work shows that if women, minorities, and children from low-income families become inventors at the same rate as men from high-income families, innovation in the US could quadruple. If you share these values, please go to internetofeducation.org and affirm the pledge. If you'd like to work with us to make your jurisdiction an initial node in the network of networks, contact me by sending an email to gnadeau@pcgus.com.
Hello, T3 Network. I'm Marty Reed with Randa Solutions, and I'm here to present to you the North Dakota Digital Transcript Initiative, which is a collab with numerous goals and a little bit different approach to delivering an open source solution. So we're focusing on empowering students to own and control their records, establish an infrastructure for self-sovereign identity, and develop an open source reference model to enable collaboration with other jurisdictions. And we're doing that through a number of different focuses. Number one is we're building the foundation on standards. So those standards being IEEE, W3C, Trust over IP, and IMS Global. We're taking those as a foundation, and then we're iterating and collaborating on top of that to reach what will be the IEEE ILR recommended practices framework that is being developed as part of this project. So the solution is built on top of an existing mature e-transcripts portal as developed by the state of North Dakota. The idea being that graduates in North Dakota want to publish their transcripts in a digital format to numerous consumers. And so we're building an open source, open credential publisher that has two major components to it. One being an achievement service that aligns the courses and the standards within the transcript or graduation credentials with a open salt server, and then publishing those and signing those with a verifiable credential. Then that is published to a student web wallet and a web viewer that then in the future can publish as a verified credential to any number of mobile wallets and DID-based architectures that are already out on the market. To give you an idea of what the web wallet is doing, we have the portfolio of the student. We have some data regarding the recent updates, any new data that's being imported into that wallet, and then a simple method to send the transcript directly from this web interface. You also have the opportunity to build out your selective portfolio and publish that as well. But this solution goes far beyond transcripts, and it builds a foundation for establishing a digital citizen identity, which you can see here. And as I mentioned, this is an open collab, so we welcome any and all to collaborate with us in North Dakota on delivering this solution to the marketplace. Right now, we have a collaboration between Public Consulting Group, Randa, Evernym, IMS Global, ID Ramp, Infotech, and Bardic Systems, Analysts, Paramount, and Convergys Tech. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Shrikant Janu, and I'm the Chief Platform Officer for a company called Greenlight Credentials, which is based in Dallas, Texas. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Greenlight Mental Health Wallet. So as you all might be aware, depression is one of the most prevalent of illnesses. And with COVID-19 being here for so long, it's just making matters worse. And the disease is prevalent in our communities. But also depression is highly treatable. But the challenge is that there is a social stigma around mental health screening, especially due to privacy concerns. So Greenlight has partnered with the North Texas law enforcement research and training organizations. And one of the primary areas of emphasis for this organization is the mental health wellness of first responders, police, firefighters, EMT, and so on. So goal of Greenlight is to make the privacy-centric tool available to first responders, where they can comfortably and safely and privately take a self-assessment to determine their mental well-being. Initially, we'll be offering two types of assessments. It's called the Patient Health Questionnaire 2 and 9. Plan to keep all of the logic for these surveys within our application itself. So there's nothing that will be exchanged with the backend server to complete the survey. All of the survey data and its logic is self-contained in our wallet application, and the results can be securely stored in the wallet application itself. And the user of the wallet application can take these surveys anonymously and does not have to establish their identity unless and until they want to share the results with third parties, such as an employer or their healthcare mental health provider. So the way that the data is shared is through the explicit permission of the user. We will be allowing the user to scan a QR code at either the mental health provider's website or employer website or some other location, which will create a connection between the wallet application and the receiving application at the provider or the employer. We are conforming to the W3 verifiable credentials. We are also conforming to the LER wrapper and wallet specification. We are close to piloting it in North Texas. Thank you for your time, and I'm open to questions now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Veer Panchal. I'm the product manager of Interplanetary Crypto Token Exchange, or ICTE. We're a high availability and high performance proof of stake blockchain. I'm presenting the JobX.me project, a real-time skill management wallet that operates on the ICTE blockchain to match job seekers and job providers. JobX uses ICTE's blockchain and open source visual interface to accommodate the interactions between three main actors: institutions, job seekers, and job providers. Our real-time implementation for the request per quote RFQ model is built on smart contracts in both Solidity and Go language, and support other languages as well. Solidity smart contracts have their own base costs for execution, and institutions can customize their own costs with their Go smart contracts, which we call gas. So, institutions will provide services to validate skill sets for job seekers and endorse job providers of the skills that they present on the blockchain. Both job seekers and job providers will have their own LER wallets, where they can manage their specific skill sets and store records and endorsements of those learned skills. Job seekers will be able to manage all the skills on their blockchain LER wallets, including self-reporting additional skills and choosing which skills are applied during smart contract interactions. When a job provider will begin to search for potential employees, they will create RFQ skill filters on the distributed blockchain environment. The filters will assist in matching job seekers and job providers, utilizing the validated skills and endorsements. Once filters are active, the ICTE blockchain will work in real time to match all the incoming requests. JobX will include all of the resources needed to start matching job providers with job seekers, but our open source interface will also allow the custom implementation of any matching logic as a job provider. After designing the initial interaction with job seekers of what skills will be assessed during the job matching, it's as simple as using the smart contract templates that we already provide to implement the design into those smart contracts. The ICTE blockchain will act as a bridge between Solidity smart contracts and Go smart contracts to ensure safe and secure interactions between job providers and job seekers. Because the visual interface is open source, any forms created for executing interaction between blockchains can be fully customized to fit the needs of any job provider or institution. Here, we're seeing a sample form where a job seeker is able to self-report their skills and a request for manual or automated verification of any of the skills, and also provide the supporting documents to the institution. This is a general diagram of ICT.io's blockchain technology. The main takeaway from this is that the level of time and development that we've put into speed and security of the network, all information sent throughout the ICT network is heavily optimized and encrypted with the latest encryption technology. This project is a collaboration between Mitch Bayata, a skills-based pre-K-12 teacher who sought to make his students ready for the workforce with a trustable learning record that they can maintain for their life, and ICTE, where we believe any industry can benefit from complete digitalization and use of the blockchain. Thank you for your time. This has been the JobX.me project.
Hi, I'm Mark Luba with IMS Global, presenting the OneEd Tech Foundation Project Wellspring. Thanks to the support of the Charles Koch Foundation and the Walmart Foundation, One EdTech, which is an affiliate of IMS Global, is able to lead this project. We will be demonstrating the digital credentials ecosystem, where a learner can accumulate learning achievements and workplace achievements and use them to advance herself in her education or her workplace career. There are three standards that make up the digital credentials ecosystem: the CLR, Comprehensive Learner Record; Open Badges, originally from Mozilla, but now published by IMS; and CASE, which is a skills framework for interoperability. There are three aspects to the Wellspring Initiative. First is the creation of interconnected competency frameworks. We're recruiting 6 education providers and 6 employer partners to create this demonstration data. The second aspect is employer research, primary research. We'll be surveying 750 employers throughout the United States and finding out about their readiness to accept and to use digital credentials in hiring and in advancement, what their plans are to do that, and what they see as the economic value of that for their organizations. And then finally, we have 2 demonstration projects of technology. The first involves searching a credential management hub. Think of it as a virtual talent pool where learners with their CLR will have structured data available for the search engine to find the best job candidates. The second aspect to this demonstration project is where the learner can submit her CLR, which is a customized collection of achievements that she chooses to share, with an applicant tracking system, which can then step through the data and interpret it, including what valuable frameworks that it is leveraging. So we expect this to be a very important aspect of deciding what the best job candidates are for the future, whether it's hiring or upskilling in the employment context. So as I said, we're recruiting educators and employers right now. So we would ask that you please contact me if you're interested in being part of Wellspring. Thank you.
All right, so that was the first set, and stretch a little bit for a second. The second grouping consists of 6 videos. Primarily the LERs in this particular set are in the context of higher ed, post-grad, teacher certification, and a couple that are more holistic in a statewide view, for example, that we'll hear from Colorado. You're seeing some of the diversity in these different approaches. The common theme, though, is a standards-based description of learning skills that is in a standard data model that is used and then wrapped and sent to either directly to another recipient in a P2P context or through an intermediary. Let's roll the next tape.
Hi, my name is Rick Goldgar. I'm an IBM Global Solutions and the product owner for the IBM Learning Credential Network. The following is a synopsis of the 2020 IBM LER pilot. The pilot was a collaboration between IBM Central New Mexico Community College, IQ4, National Student Clearinghouse, and Western Governors University. A core use case of many was Izzy's story. Izzy was a fictional student at CNM, and to chart her career path, transferred to WGU, completed cybersecurity skills-based coursework, and was found and hired by IBM as a cybersecurity analyst. Izzy represented a use case. Overall, the pilot demonstrated the ability for the appropriate stakeholders to use an interoperable blockchain-based platform to issue, manage, and search for credentials, and for learners to explore career pathways. The pilot is based on the IBM Learning Credential Network platform. The IBM LCN platform includes the IBM LCN infrastructure, and issuer and requester applications. For the pilot, these were integrated with the ESC MyHolder wallet and the IQ4 Academic Compass application, all supporting industry standards, including W3 verifiable credentials, W3 DID, IMS CLR, PESC, Open Badges, and GDPR. Participants used the system in all stakeholder roles. Some participants had additional specific roles. NC issued skilled map credentials as the proxy issuer for CNM, and WGU issued their own. IBM acted as the employer searching for job candidates, and learners were represented by all participants, including actual students. The learners received wallets, defined their profiles in their wallets, accepted and managed credentials in their wallet, and used learning pathways to analyze their skills and get recommended courses to fulfill their career goals. The pilot succeeded in all of its primary goals. We demonstrated the ability for learners to manage credentials and career paths, and employers to search for candidates based on their skills and credentials, all accomplished using multiple vendor technologies integrated in a standards-based interoperable platform. The pilot findings were very positive. We demonstrated the LCN platform can act as a trust anchor for all stakeholders. We demonstrated the LCN can provide an interoperable platform for diverse credential applications, and we found that the MyHub wallet and Academic Compass applications showed real value to learners. We're excited by the possibilities these technologies bring, and that the pilot was successful in such a short time. Thank you to all those who participated and supported this effort.
Greetings from Colorado. I'm happy to be with you today, and I'd like to start with some questions. How can we better serve those in the greatest need? How can we leverage technology to accelerate individuals and societies toward collective success? And how can we ensure that all lifelong learning counts? These are just some of the questions we're exploring as we harness innovation to meet the ambitious vision necessary to ensure a thriving workforce for the present and the future. The Colorado Distributed Ecosystem Exchange, or CODEX, is an exciting new state framework and LER pilot network for connecting learners to education and work. Seeded by the Colorado Council for Advancement of Blockchain Technology, created by the governor in 2018, this collaborative work and public-private partnership network is helping to chart a blueprint for exploration of blockchains and emerging technology in state government and education. With Colorado exploring new models for quantifying value, new trusted digital instruments for documenting lifelong learning journeys, and new protocols for mapping skills and competencies across perceived and actual barriers, Codex folds into the existing infrastructure with the goals of serving learners and optimizing systems, all while aligning with the outcomes identified by the Colorado Commission on Higher Education's master plan, which include erasing equity gaps, increasing credential attainment, maximizing affordability, and investing in innovation. Existing projects with partners and tools such as Credential Engine, BrightHive, W3C, will enable an environment for invitational participation from tech service providers in the future. Building from the enthusiasm of both the Blockchain Council and CDHE's exploration in this field, the project aims to continue to build on existing projects and priorities while opening the door for further collaborative efforts with service providers and entities well into 2020 and 2021, aiming for meaningful and demonstrated impact in 2022. Through this effort, and in alignment with the range of existing state initiatives, Colorado is now positioned to pioneer next generation LER infrastructure in pursuit of the governor's priority to ensure all Coloradans have access to opportunities, quality, lifelong education connected to the future of work. This collaborative and growing network of partners empowers an ecosystem-first approach and ensures that the proposed pilots will be sustainable and benefit all Colorado learners for years to come. This will be executed by prioritizing 3 pilot innovations. 1, supporting and enhancing the state digital ID to empower learners. 2, maintaining and expanding the state data trust to unlock lifelong learning. And 3, promoting digital credentials and pathways to improve economic mobility. Through this decentralized but unified vision across a growing network, Colorado aims to become a blueprint for inspiration and collaboration with others as we move into the future of rethinking, innovating state policy, and advancing educational and economic opportunities for all.
eLocker helps people be their best. eLocker gives you control of your educational records throughout your life. Keep this valuable information in your eLocker, and eLocker will help you use it to advance your life in school through personalization and help you excel in your work life. eLocker makes the strongest possible connection between your skills and the right job for you. We all know that our lives are awash in data. In fact, none of our endeavors produce more data than our education. Very little of the data generated during the educational process is put to its highest and best use in the control of the learner. Kept safely and securely in eLocker, these data can wonderfully transform lives and help everyone achieve their goals and live their best life. Our world is growing more complex at an accelerating pace. Technology and innovations are changing life and work nearly every day. Jobs and careers are disrupted by innovation and automation. Public health protections and new paradigms are bringing unprecedented change to education. People need help navigating our complex world. They need a trusted guide in their pursuit of education and work. It's simply not feasible for everyone to have a human guide during their entire life, but their skills data can serve as that guide. Your skills data can help you identify and fill skills gaps, lower the cost of your education, help you find a job or a better job, and help personalize and individualize your education. eLocker works in partnership with educational institutions like these to empower learners with their data and digital credentials. At institutions like these, eLocker brings the depth and breadth of a university education to life. At the University of Central Oklahoma, students develop in areas like leadership and service learning. For instance, in an evidence-based process that might earn them a badge in research, creative, and scholarly activities for a research project completed outside of class under faculty mentorship. Together with traditional degrees, these badges signal to employers and others the specific skills gained by college learners. At work and at school, in after-school programs and at community centers, at science museums and art museums, during internships and apprenticeships, from homeschools and learning pods, in fully online classes and fully in-person classes, through things we experience together and some we experience apart. Learning is happening everywhere. Thankfully, eLocker goes everywhere you go and is completely interoperable with all other systems. eLocker has adopted the IMS CLR standard and is excited to partner with all those who champion interoperability. eLocker uses your skills to help you advance to your best life.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Carbonero, Director of Academic Partnerships here at APHIS. APHIS is the leading education technology company that partners with higher education to improve learner success and empower authentic lifelong learning. APHIS is partnering with Johns Hopkins University. Our powerful assessment management software is helping higher education institutions such as Johns Hopkins drive measurable results and engage students throughout their lifelong learning journey through comprehensive learner record. Using APHIS end-to-end solutions, Johns Hopkins is working towards an expanded learner continuum rooted in authentic assessment for learning, skills recognition, and employability enablement through their CEU multidisciplinary pilot projects. The main challenge we are overcoming is understanding the potential of the digital credential ecosystem and recognition of skills that are verifiable with evidence. Johns Hopkins seeks to provide learners with a fully functional CLR linked to frameworks and competencies that make their skills explicit and shareable to employers for promotion or new positions that best match their skill set. CLR is available to employment platforms and AI applications. We have the blueprint to digitize, design, deliver, and collect all of the achievements into CLR. JHU is moving through this complete blueprint to CLR. And here's a quick walkthrough of our progress. Here you see the programs and the outcomes and curriculum map linked to skills and badges in real time for the learner. CEU pilots are working through this phase. The CLR dashboard provides all of the resources learners need to connect with coaches, review their skills, and organize their story. the learner is able to share their assertions in full or in part with third-party applications. CLR containing the knowledge, skills, and abilities acquired in CEU programs can be transmitted to third-party platforms such as these. CLR compliant with the IMS Global JSON standard is created and accessible to the learner and shareable to other platforms who can ingest the structured data. We are humbled to be working with Johns Hopkins University on these innovative CEU pilot projects. Thank you to the other LER pilot projects for their forward thinking and to the T3 Innovation Network for their leadership on all of this work.
Hi, my name is Feng Ho, co-founder and CEO of Pieces.io. I want to thank T3 Innovation Network for the opportunity today. I'm going to spend a minute also to give a brief update on our pilot and then jump right into a quick demo to show you exactly what we have done. Our pilot is called Verifiable Learning Artifacts on LER. Pieces.io is running a pilot with our partners, Oral Roberts University, Maryville University, and Credential Masters. The challenge that we are all facing today is that many of our soft and power skills that we have developed over our lifetimes are not necessarily included in our official learning credentials. There is no easy way to verify our resumes or the LinkedIn profiles. So the solution is to provide a way for learners to issue their self-asserted credentials with verifiable artifacts on blockchain. And this is what we have done. We have built a digital career portfolio prototype with Maryville University, and the impact has been enormous. Maryville students have tested portfolio and will use the learning artifacts they issued on blockchain to share and verify online. We have also run pilot demos for many K-12 and higher education institutions. They're all excited and wanted to join our pilot. So the initial result has been enormous and has shown great potential that the pilot can help students with their job seeking and career building. With that, I'm going to turn to the demo. So the demo that we have built with Maryville University is called the Digital Career Portfolio, which was based on the 8 competency framework developed by the National Association of Colleges and Employers, NAS. So in this demo, I'm going to quickly show you 2 specific credentials. The first one is more of a traditional certificate, as you can see, showing that students have successfully completed the diversity training. And this particular certificate is readily verifiable. But I'm also going to show you that the student has uploaded a learning artifacts. In this case, it's a video clip. So let's take a quick look.
Cybersecurity major, and I am vice president of Muslim Student Association, and today is Hijab Awareness Day. And
so seeing is believing, right? And of course, this video clip is also verifiable on blockchain. So our goal is to create the digital portfolio for as many students as we can to help them build LERs with verifiable artifacts on blockchain to help them with job seeking and career building. Thank you.
All right. Now we have one last set to go. Hang in there. And also want to remind you that at the conclusion of this next set, there'll be a brief discussion of phase 3 and the future of the network, which will take place in its full form next week. But in this last set, we're looking more at learner mobility and introducing the opportunity of translating military skills and abilities into civilian work and learning requirements or credentials. and another one that is really anchored directly in the workplace. And finally, a large, broad network that is providing a whole range of services. So you can see it's quite a potpourri. So last group, hang in there, 6 more to go, and each of them 3 minutes, and we'll be joining you immediately thereafter. Roll the tape.
Our vision for the Trusted Learner Network, or TLN, is to empower every learner with the ability to securely and verifiably share learning credentials of all types over the course of their lifetime. To learn more about how to make this vision a reality, one of the places we're starting is with reverse transfer, which is the practice of enabling a student to earn an associate degree while on their path to a bachelor's degree by sharing data with the consent of the student from a university to a 2-year institution where they previously attended. So building a system for reverse transfer is where we're starting with our current partner, the Maricopa County Community College District here in Arizona. So the problems we're trying to solve with the reverse transfer use case are the first mile challenges related to exchanging verifiable credentials. But we're doing so in the context of our culture here at ASU, where we aspire to be measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how they succeed. So this work is also an attempt to chip away at the larger national challenge of stranded credits for higher education learners. So which tools, data, standards, et cetera, are we using? Well, the data we're using is typically contained in a traditional transcript of higher education, things like credit-bearing courses, grades, and degrees. Our data model is designed to be compatible with the CLR standard from IMS Global, and our preference for open source solutions reflects our commitment to inclusiveness and lowering the barrier to entry for future participants. Right now, our application is blockchain agnostic, while we continue exploring the options for a distributed ledger technology. The prototype design of our application is intended to connect with a DLT through APIs. Right now, we have an MVP application and are designing our second version of APIs in preparation for a full data load and validation next term. We expect to connect to a distributed ledger technology by summer 2021. And in thinking about our primary findings this far, in the technology space, the idea that identity is a big deal has been reinforced. This work is all about identity and integrating it into the real world and existing technologies where identities are currently linked to organizational relationships. At ASU, we've actually launched a third horizon initiative called Pocket to further our capabilities with next generation identity solutions. We've also learned more about how community colleges, what their needs are, how reducing friction for credit exchange and empowering learners as their owners of their own data in one area could impact other processes where there may be resistance to change. So we're working on smoothing through that resistance. We look forward to continuing to learn alongside others who are also endeavoring to solve these challenges. Thank you.
This is Adam Lemon with Tribe ID. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present today. Very quick background is that we've been around for 3 years now, Toronto-based, but operate globally, having completed projects in over a dozen countries for many exciting clients, such as the UNDP and Spectrum Health. Also quickly worth noting that we are keenly focused on digital identity and have been active across the broad identity and education technology communities and working groups globally for several years. And Tribe is powered by a very strong leadership team, critically spearheaded by Kim Cameron, the former chief architect of identity and visionary behind Active Directory with Microsoft, as well as the author of the 7 Laws of Identity. The core objective of this active project, and very much of our underlying mission statement, is to empower learners with rapid career pathways comprising micro-credentials across institutions. And also more topical than ever, to enable the reskilling of displaced workforces to meet evolving industry needs. The project assembles that of a global meta university, enabling learners to acquire micro-credentials from many institutions. This model presents students with the flexibility and agility they need to complete required education modules when and how best suits their needs. Students are given great mobility and opportunity to pursue the education that best meets their needs and ultimately aligns with that of their personal or professional aspirations. Pathways may be clearly defined, including required credentials or skills by industry and employers. These are then able to be mapped to educational offerings, which may direct the student to options to obtain a specific opportunity. Students may then go about completing courses and acquiring credentials to complete their pathway and prove their progress. These credentials are able to be effectively stacked and presented to navigate across and through defined pathways. Important to note that this model has been rooted in the 7 laws of identity and makes progress towards a new paradigm, enabling truly user-owned and portable data, but most importantly, preserving user privacy and safety. No longer does an earner need to share public URLs to hosted data hoping for access while exposing themselves to surveillance. These education credentials can be packaged, shared, and verified privately without any third-party involvement, creating a trusted and safe ecosystem for students to efficiently access educational opportunities, align themselves with promising career paths, and verifiably prove their capabilities. Finally, we've received fantastic responses from all project participants to date, noting the importance of verifiable credentials to the future of education, that we must enable agile and nimble learning, as well as means to securely and safely share verifiable data. Thanks so much.
The IMT LearnX Skilled Worker Accelerator project was developed in response to a DoD initiative to develop a nationwide ecosystem for forecasting and developing skilled workers with strategic skills. Our goal in the project was to create both learning record tools and rapid upskilling infrastructure that would support these goals at velocity and scale. The 3 partners include the LearnX division of IMT, which will provide the technical resources and development, University of Illinois, Geese College of Business, which will provide online course and module templates initially for cybersecurity, and the University of West Florida, which will procure and support the veterans cohort of 1,000 initial workers with strategic skills and security clearances. This graphic illustrates the skilled worker ecosystem model envisioned by the DoD. On the left, you see the various academic institutions from K-12 to community college to university level that provide the pathways and career development programs that will satisfy industry partner needs. What we're bringing to the project is the ability to identify and aggregate all of the skills from various sources for the individual worker, do likewise for industry-specified skill and competency frameworks, and to do a matching analysis between the two. The gap analysis that results from that will lead to the programs for upskilling developed by University of Illinois and further connected to various national databases that will then enable the national forecasting for the DoD and the industry partners. The LearnX digital wallet provides a compact and innovative platform for presentation and navigation of lifelong learning records for any individual. It validates learner identity, validates issuer identity, aggregates lifelong learning that includes multi-level credentials from all sources as shown on the right, links to evidence artifacts, does precision job matching, and is able to accumulate standards-based records with various standards and is mobile enabled. In order to create the detailed skill profiles for individuals that are required by this project, UI Geese will provide its innovative online course module templates. These templates include superior instructional design standards, granular video modules that can both be repurposed by other skill providers, and the integrated virtual tutor will be able to issue micro-credentials and aggregate them in a digital wallet for each worker. In summary, our project will help develop a national ecosystem that aggregates all learning records, creates an LER for skilled workers that automates job matching and leads to gap training and precision placement in jobs.
Hello, my name is Rita Dietrich, and I'm a senior analyst with Solid. Solid has been working with the DoD and the services for more than 17 years and supports all of their credentialing on LER sites. COOL helps connect service members with related credentials, and in support of that, Solid has done the analysis work necessary to map military data to civilian credentialing data. It's through our work with the COOL program that MilGears was born. Supported by all the data we've accumulated over the years, we began developing MilGears to go beyond the informational nature of COOL and instead provide customized occupation and credentialing pathways to service members so they could make more informed decisions. This eventually evolved beyond pathway recommendations towards developing the Military Learning and Employment Record, or LER, because we realized we were collecting a whole range of information about individual service members, both from within their time in the military as well as outside of it. We also realized that building out an LER would not only benefit the service member by exposing all their experience and learning, but it would also serve other populations. For the military services, it could aid in talent management by allowing them to target specific skills or build out modular training to fill gaps. It could also assist with retention because if a service member is interested in changing their military occupation, they'd be able to see which occupations are a better fit for their interests and/or skill sets and research whether or not they could transition into a new career field. Academia and credentialing bodies could reference an LER to evaluate military training and education and recognize it for credit, while for employers, it could aid in civilianizing the skills and competencies they've acquired during their service using a common language that more accurately reflects what the individual knows and can do as a result of their military training and allows talent managers to have a deeper understanding of the candidate's skills so they can more readily hire veterans. For this pilot, we're aiming to provide the service member or veteran with ownership of their data to translate their military training into civilian-friendly language and to support transition into the civilian sphere. As we progress towards these goals, we've encountered challenges. The biggest ones revolve around the lack of standards of military data, necessary security measures when interacting with government systems, and making sure the context of the skills and competencies attributed to a service member are accurately captured and conveyed in a way that makes sense to the civilian community. Over the past year, we've been working on several aspects of the LER, from the starting point of accepting service records and populating a record to exploring how we can continue to build it out. We began identifying open data standards that could apply to our outputs and allow for increased interoperability, and have begun the process of applying those data standards to our outputs. We've been testing interoperability with a learning management system, or LMS, allowing course information, course completions, and grades to be fed into our system directly from the LMS. We've also been working with Microsoft on digital authentication and verified credentialing so that we can eventually provide the LER as a digitally authenticated credential that can live within a user's wallet and be shared with others. We're also exploring how to intake a verified credential from an academic institution. We've been aligning our work with the T3 goals and guidelines. Some of these include testing interoperability between the military and academic institutions and related systems, and identifying data sources across the services to capture competencies in training and experience. As we expand, we hope to continue with our digital authentication pilot to include testing of actual two-way transfer of an LER, and we're currently working with academic institutions, but would like to expand to other credential providers and employers. We'd also like to work with civilian employers and credential providers to use the LER for competency mapping and the verification of service member qualifications. We're working to translate military skills and competencies into civilian terminology. We'd like to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to match to job descriptions and verify learning skills and competencies, and integrate with other vendor applications such as job boards or career and academic planning tools. A big thank you to all who have participated today. We're always looking for opportunities to expand and collaborate, so please reach out if you have any questions, and have a nice day.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to share 5 things you should know about the Velocity Network. Number 1, the Velocity Network is by far the largest endeavor to unify the infrastructure underlying the global labor market. We call it the Internet of Careers. This is a distributed infrastructure allowing individuals, businesses, and education institutions to seamlessly and cost-effectively share trusted career credentials built for the digital age. As of today, over 30% of the global HR software market and some of the biggest names in employment and education are members of the Velocity Network. And these members are collaboratively building the Internet of Careers for the entire industry. These trailblazers will soon enable their customers to integrate with Velocity, creating a network with education and career data for over 1 billion lives. A bandwagon effect is already in play, and requests for participation are inbound and growing rapidly. Number 2, the Velocity Network is a non-proprietary, open source, distributed network run and governed by its members for its members. All tech developed is open source and royalty free. The distribution infrastructure, standards, operations, and compliance framework are all governed by the Velocity Network Foundation. Number 3, the Velocity Experience Center, our testing and demoing sandbox, which is a T3 LER Hub pilot, is now live and fully operational. The Experience Center allows members to test their applications and integrations against elaborate multi-vendor use cases. Number 4, the Velocity Network closely connects education and employment, as evident in our rich membership. The network accommodates diverse career and education credential types, allowing members to deploy their unique use cases while maintaining interoperability with the rest of the industry. Based on member needs, these include, in addition to education and employment records, licenses and certifications, recognitions, performance, skills and competencies, assessments, contingent and gig employment assignments, occupational health, badges, and any additional future types of credentials that will emerge in the market and members will request. The Velocity Network is not a standards organization. We are adopting available and emerging industry standards, both at a technology level and at a data level. And the number 5 thing we would like you to know about the Velocity Network is we are open, collaborative, and work to solve one of the biggest challenges in the global labor market. This is an awesome undertaking requiring broad industry level collaboration. Mainnet is launching in Q2 2021, and we invite all of you to join us as we move to change the world of work.
Hi, my name is Will Ross. I'm the founder of Tendo, a company I set up in 2018 in the UK to make frontline work a more safe, dignified, and prosperous place to earn a living. Our LER acts as a skills account that's portable for life. It captures hours worked and skills demonstrated within a given time period, all verified by both an employee and an employer. This is Anel. He is one of our users based in Cape Town. He is a barista. He creates his information that you see here by sending it through from his phone across to his manager, who receives it in an email where they can verify or dispute it. All the information you see here to do with Anel's skills are verified, which means he owns them in real time. The benefits for users and customers, or the users such as Anel, are able to see what skills they have and articulate these in the workplace. He's also able to own the information for life, so use it in multiple jobs in different sectors, whichever country he works in. His manager, to his right, is accountable for his skills, so she creates course information, sends the skills across to Anel for completion, and is able to track these. To his left is a area manager. She's able to see different venues that the coffee chain own, and also for compliance reasons, but also reallocate staff according to skills, both with their current employer or also previous employers. To date, we've been creating this information manually, or in this kind of concierge model, to make sure that employees actually want Tendo to exist and don't see it as tracking or policing. Obviously, there's a kind of recent history. There's a problem there. So the plans going forwards are to automate this information from 2 sources that are consistent with our hours and skills indexes. They are from a learning management system, so however a company stores information to do with what the company does and derives skills from that. And then the timestamping software that a frontline worker on an hourly wage will typically be using, and then sending these between the organization account to the employee account on a regular basis, weekly, if not monthly. Our next steps for 2021 are to continue to improve Tendo from the bottom up, to make sure that employees are using it regularly and they value it and want to see it as a reference point for their economic reputation. For the enterprise engagement, we need to make sure that we can scale this information. So we're looking to pilot with 20,000 or more employees. We're already speaking to 2 large American companies. We'll see which ones move first. Please feel free to reach out or ask any questions in the Q&A immediately afterwards.
And there you have it. I'd like to thank all of the pilot project teams for their work, their openness, and their dedication to the principles of sharing of the learner agency and commitments to privacy and security for these records, and the importance of creating a more signal in the sharing and this demonstration of their learners' abilities and capabilities and knowledge. Thank you all again for your presentations and your videos. And in the interest of time, I'd like to turn it over from here to Jason and quickly segue. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you to all of our LER pilots who were showcased today. We appreciate you putting those presentations together and sharing the work that you're doing and the innovations you are pursuing with our network. We have those recorded. We'll be sharing those post-meeting and making sure they are accessible to the entire T3 Innovation Network. Now we're going to transition in our remaining 4 minutes to cover our final topic, which is more of a teaser for next week. I mentioned that this meeting is really going to be done in 2 parts. Today, we are bringing to a close the first meeting, and then next week, Friday, we'll be having our final meeting on the T3 Network of Networks. So hopefully, many of you have participated in this new work group. Hopefully, if you haven't participated, you heard about it. But just to give you kind of some highlights and to tease next week, I'd like to now introduce Naomi Sekerish, who is our project lead for the T3 Network of Networks work group. So Naomi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. And now that we've recapped the year and more, I have the privilege of presenting the way forward. As a capstone to the work presented thus far today, the T3 Network engaged in an extensive strategic planning effort this fall. And I'll also say an accelerated, very quick and nimble planning effort this fall, with the goal of establishing a long-term and sustainable network of networks. We formed the diverse T3N² work group. We had about 150 participants join, which led to 3 work group events and over 30 interviews conducted, pretty close to 40 individual in-depth interviews conducted with experts and our members. And when we were developing our final report, that led to over 500 comments and ideas for the draft document. So really exciting. Thank everyone for their contributions. And the final recommendations and implementation plan for phase 3 will be announced on December 11th. So we're really looking forward to having you there with us as we cover this future look for T3 Network of Networks. Next slide. So to make sure everyone has the information and can join us, it's Friday, December 11th, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And we'll again avail the report and findings of the work group that was created to chart the future direction, organization, and scope of the T3 network in ways that accelerate the transformation of the talent marketplace that we're all working toward. You'll also see the first public announcement of what's in store for the network for 2021 and beyond. So we look forward to having you there, and thank you so much for being here today.
All right, everyone. Well, that brings us to a close today. I wanted to thank all of our presenters, as well as all of our project leads for helping make this day possible. Also wanted to give a special thank you to the Chamber team, in particular, Josh Westfall, for helping orchestrate today's session. And most of all, thank you to the network and to our funders. Without all of you, this work would not be possible. So I like to always say that, you know, the Chamber has the pleasure of herding the cats, but this is all of you, the project leads, the members themselves, those who have participated in all the work groups over these 2.5 years, nearly 3 years. This is your work. This is your legacy. And we're excited next week to share with you plans for how we plan to build upon that legacy going forward as part of this third and important phase as we launch the T3 Network of Networks. So thank you for joining us. You'll be hearing from us soon about how to access the recording and the demos and the showcases. But we hope you could join us next week as we formally bring phase 2 to a close. So thank you and have a wonderful day.